for Ray's note. Welcome to Sportsslaw. It is the pro and the prof. Tonight we are going to be talking with high school football coach Dan Loria and high school girls lacrosse coach Allie Rosenau about the state of sports, high school sports in Michigan. It's been a long time since we actually were in the classroom. I think it was sometime in March.
March 11th was our last day in Rochester.
12th was our, yeah.
Wow. And Lomas, you've got, how's it going with you today?
It's good, Deb. Another beautiful day today. Able to get outside. Of course, being contained in the household has been driving us crazy for all these weeks, Deb, just like we've been talking about, and trying to get back to normalcy and just what normalcy is going to be. What does that look like? And I think we got two great guests on our podcast tonight that deal with high school athletes, and we'll know the challenges of trying to incorporate sports back into high school during this COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, we do know that there are more players on the youth level, and you two are on the forefront of these kids who want to make it, who want to play sports. Coach Dan, what's going on with the football program? That's a fall sport,
right? Well, we're doing the best we can right now. I mean, we got the distance learning going on right now, and I don't want to overwhelm the kids But I've been sending them some stuff offensively, sending them some stuff defensively. They've got questions. I keep telling them as soon as we know for sure a starting time or a date, we'll pass that along, get ready to go. But the hardest part is just not knowing. And I feel for these kids. It's terrible what happened in the spring. All those spring athletes, losing the sports that they love to play. And I know that's what's worrying the fall athletes as we approach this.
Yeah, Dan, I know, and just from listening to the NFL and listening to the colleges, some of the coaches actually have said they have enjoyed doing the virtual learning, saying that they could teach the kids a lot more by doing it virtually. How have you felt about the virtual learning, and how have you think it's helped you or hurt you any?
You know what? I think it depends on what the topic is. I think it's much more difficult. If they have more questions and they need to see more, it makes it a lot harder. But I do think you have their attention, especially now. There's not a whole lot to do. We're all homebound right now, and so I think their focus is a little bit more there. And as anything we do from this point forward, because we're going to be to June 1st pretty soon, and we're assuming that this is going to happen. We're going to have fall sports. So a couple months we'll be starting it now. So that kind of kicks the kids into gear. And I think what kind of they gravitate towards is talking football, the X's and O's, as important as they are. But I just think it kind of puts them at ease that this is going to happen, even though it's still not for sure. But just being a part of it, that we're talking about the upcoming season, I know selfishly it makes me feel good too. That, hey, we're in this together, and we're going to play football in the fall. My wife would always say, I don't think you guys are playing. And nope, we're playing. We're playing.
And you've been coaching for 19 years, and I know Lomas is one of your coaches.
Yes.
Yes. If you could call it that, Deb, I call myself out there coaching. If you could call it that.
Oh, he's being too generous. He's great. I brag about him all the time. I mean, obviously he knows what he's talking about, but his interaction with the kids.
A bit of football.
Yeah. And well, Allie, let me ask you this. Again, one of the biggest challenges with this pandemic is the athletes being able to working out on their own, being able to do that. How has that been? You have the lacrosse team. How has it been with your players trying to work out and stay in shape, or to try to get in this shape for sports?
Well, to be honest, like the hardest part for me being a spring sport is that we had done all the prep. We had been going to I work with Orange Theory. I know a couple of the managers there. So we were going to Orange Theory Fitness twice a week with the team. We had been doing conditionings another 2 times a week on the other days. And I think the hardest part for the girls was they were ready to go. They were ready for this season. I had 12 seniors this year. And it was our 3rd day of we had our 3rd day of tryouts, and sports were cut off. So I think the hardest part right now was they were ready to go. And so as soon as they kind of put everything on hold, all the girls were running laps around their neighborhoods. They were playing wall ball, hopefully not breaking any windows at their houses. But they were doing the work at home and asking me for more. But we also kind of got put on hold as coaches, as we were told not to contact our team, not to send out workouts for a while, just because we didn't know the status of things. We didn't know if we'd be going back. We didn't know when we'd be going back. So I had to kind of go silent on my team for a little bit before I could really say anything to them. And I think right now they're all kind of in this waiting game of, what do I do? When am I going to do this? Because a lot of my girls, they play on private lacrosse teams. They do travel. They have other clubs that they join in the summer and play with each other. So I think they're kind of trying to figure out what's going on, because a lot of lacrosse is getting out there and playing and running. So I think for the most part, they're all running right now. But it's kind of been weird because they did the work and now they're at a standstill. And I think the hardest part was for my seniors. I had a great group of seniors this year. They were ready to go. They had gotten at least 30 more girls to come out. This would have been our 2nd year of never making cuts from the program. And which is heartbreaking to me. I absolutely hate making cuts. But unfortunately, I didn't really have to with everything going on. But they were so ready to go, and it just broke my heart when everything got cut off for them.
I think that's a really good point for both Dan and Allie. You have seniors. How are they affected? Now, I know with the girls lacrosse being a spring sport, they just lost their sport. But Dan, how do you think this affects your seniors?
I think it. I always use the analogy. You can as a junior, you could come off of a great season, but you always look forward to your senior year. And I think that's what they're scared of, because 1% to 2% of the kids will go on and play college sports, and that's it. If you're a junior and they take fall sports away, at least you got that 1 more year left. But like with the spring, the seniors, you're not getting that year back, and for most of them, that's it.
Yeah,
that's a hard way to go out. And I feel for them. I would say scared to a degree when I talk to some of the kids, recently, and they're nervous. They're nervous that this isn't going to happen, and and just keep the faith. That's all we can do, and hope it works itself out here. And it sounds like it's gonna, but no, I think for a senior, and I think of myself. You look forward to that senior year and this and that, and it'll be weird. And the kids going to school and not having sports would be tough.
Yeah. It's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And I know, like, a lot of my lacrosse girls, I had 1 or 2 of them last year that continued playing in college, and I had one of them that was really looking at continuing on. So 1 out of 12 seniors, like, that's it. They worked their butt off to get ready for this season, and they didn't get to have it, which is heartbreaking. I think I spent, 2 months thinking about what I could say to these seniors. How do you coach them through this? This is nothing we've ever experienced before. How do I coach a high school girl through this time and say, you're maybe never going to get to play lacrosse again?
Wow,
it's the hardest. It's heartbreaking to think about it.
And I think for you guys, it had to be. I can't imagine, because we have time. We're as prepared as we can be if this happens and we don't have sports. But for the spring coaches, there's no way anybody anticipated that even happening. Yeah. So as we're building up here, and I've kind of been telling the kids back and forth a little bit that, hey, we're in this together. If this happens, we get in the fall, I don't want to go too deep into it now with the kids, but I will, that, hey, we got to be smart, and we got to try to stay as healthy and as safe as we possibly can, which I know can be easier said than done. But I mean, you guys just had it pulled out from underneath you, and you guys were right there. You're cutting.
Literally, we were on our session. We did session 3. You can't make cuts till after 5. So you got 3 sessions in, and sorry guys, and you've got freshmen that are coming out for lacrosse for the first time ever and never held a stick in their hand. And
wow.
Now again, it's just they were ready to go. They were excited and they wanted the season. We had a brand new JV coach this year too, who was excited to come in, and it was her 3rd day of coaching and everything got cut off. So it's totally uncharted territory. But you just try to make something special for the seniors no matter what. I mean, even in the fall, you have time to prepare, like mentally prepare that this is a possibility. And I think it took some time. I went last Tuesday and made deliveries to all my seniors. I had my mask on. I brought my little 4-month-old puppy with me, and I went around and I had I wrote up kind of like a senior speech for all of them. And then I hand wrote a note. I brought a bouquet of flowers. They had their varsity letter awards that they received from me. And I went door to door. It took me about 5 hours to go to all 12 seniors. But I went door to door and made those deliveries to them. I wanted to do something special, and I had little bandanas made for each of them with their names on it. And it was also weird. We pick a theme for our team every year. This year we chose the word unbreakable, which we chose this before the season started. And I found it so fitting. So I got the headbands. They say unbreakable across the front of them. So, but.
Okay. I'm going to, what's really interesting is Coach Dan. So are you going to do bouquets and flowers?
A little different for boys.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah.
When do you have to start, Lomas? Dan, when do you have to start practicing for the fall?
That's what I think what I hear again is when that announcement comes to MHSAA, I heard that it could be July 1st. And they've changed it, like with football. We used to only have a 4-man rule. They're allowed us to have 7 guys at a time. But I heard it might be back to 4. That I don't know yet. Like, we've always done like a big camp where we can bring everybody together. I think that's going to be out for July, which we'll find out soon. But that's what I heard. And I've talked to some high school football coaches, and that's the same thing they're saying that they heard is July 1st as a starting time, which wouldn't pause. And then our official time, I think, is, I don't have a calendar, but like August 11th would be the official start time.
Yeah, I just think about some of maybe the logistical nightmares that you coaches are going to have. I'm just thinking about, because I'm hearing rumors that maybe the high schools open back up and you got odd, even days, or, kids are just coming to the class, coming to school a couple of days out the week. So if that's the case, how does a practice look? Say if they do it odd, even days, and there's one day where the kid doesn't have to come to school, but you're going to have practice. The logistics of trying, maybe the kid don't have a transportation to get to practice, or he's used to the bus to get there, or whatever. Are those things that you guys, Allie and Dan, have y'all thought about that and how that's going to look as far as being able to keep all the kids on the same page and try to keep some type of semblance of a practice schedule together?
From what I've been hearing is if things are going the course that they're going right now, you're probably going to see that. You're going to see we're an odd even schedule. So our kids have half their classes like on Monday, then the other half on Tuesday. So it sounds like, and I'm not saying this is what we're going to do, but there's talk of like half the school would be in for 2 days. The other half would be in for 2 days. And then that one day, no kids would be there. They would clean the school completely. But like to Lomas's point, for the varsity, it's not as difficult. They have cars, they have friends to pick them up.
Yeah.
If they're not at school, it's the JV and the freshmen. if both parents are working, getting to practice.
Yeah, and I think too, at this point, we don't know what school is going to look like. There's no official plan, and I think administrators are trying to figure that out too, and they just don't know because they're waiting on direction from the government to see what we're even allowed to do for schools. So I think for me, I'm kind of waiting to see what school's even going to look like. I mean, I'm a school teacher, so that's kind of my first priority right now is what is my classroom going to look like in the fall? Right. Let alone trying to think of what is my practice going to look like next spring. So I think I'm kind of waiting on a little bit more direction from the schools to see what's going to happen there. And then to my athletic director on what guidelines the school wants to follow with that. But I think this is where, I mean, in Rochester at least, we had a question about how the support from the community has been. We've had amazing support. I mean, people have volunteered to go drop off diapers at somebody's house. And I think if it came down to it, I mean, football's a big sport. I'm sure you could get some community members willing to help out in that aspect. I mean, I think everybody's kind of willing to jump in and help. And I feel the most support I've felt kind of from my community in Rochester than I ever have before as an educator or even with the sport. Everybody just wants to jump in and donate to the school, help out in the schools, help get supplies around to people. So I think it's a waiting game, really.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you guys about too is, you know, it might be a little taboo to bring this up, but I'm keep hearing after this, dealing with this virus, a lot of mental health issues. And we know young kids, you know, at that age, they're impressionable, you know, either the good way or the bad way. You know, that's where we train these young kids to be great adults. What about the mental aspect of dealing with the kids? And, you know, I'm quite sure it's going to be a lot of questions, not only from the kids, but what about their parents? You know, especially Dan, a contact sport, and lacrosse too. Both contact sports where you have to contact people. How do you reassure the parents or reassure the kids that it's okay to come back and start playing?
I think number one, I think that's a great question. I think it's we have to have stuff in order to really convince parents it's okay. There's some kids, they're playing, they don't need reinforcement. Boom, football starting, I want to be out there. There's going to be a number of kids, a number of parents that may say, oh, I don't know if I want him out there, or I don't know if I want her out there. So I think, what are we going to do to decrease the opportunity of this ever happening? And, you know, I've been kind of writing some stuff down, but until anything's official, because I don't, you know, I keep going back and forth. What, you know, we're talking about like cleaning the shoulder pads, you know, putting their numbers on the shoulder pads, and after every practice, just spraying them down. Now, there's a chance they may say no one's going to use the locker room. Kids are taking their pads home, then they bring their pads back. But I think as much as we can do to clean it, but when it comes to like on the field, you know, like right now we're getting the I haven't even had one in my hand to feel it, but you know, everyone's trying to create something here to help the situation. So they're selling a lot of masks that they can wear underneath their helmets and such. Mm-hmm. I look at it, but I don't know, like breathing. You know, we're playing games in 5-degree weather sometimes, so I don't know much about that. But you know, if the ventilation is good and it helps, there's an option right there. The MHSA may say, hey, guess what? Everyone's wearing one.
Yeah, and I mean, for girls lacrosse, you're going to bump into somebody, but we don't have padding. I mean, girls wear skirts and tank tops out there. There's no padding. There's nothing guarding them from somebody else. They have goggles covering their eyes and a stick. So I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to have to go even more like no contact or what, but it's going to be weird if it goes to that. But I'm hoping that we can get some guidance and put some plans in place, whether it's if you're feeling remotely sick, don't come.
Mm-hmm. You know what I was kind of wondering, and I don't know how much of an issue this would be, but I was almost wondering if they would come across and say, so we're playing a game on a Friday night, and I'm wondering if they're going to say, Thursday, the head coach has got to have the trainer's got to take the temperature of everybody on their team.
Yeah.
Before they go play something. I think that alone would help. And you just got to the honor system. Everyone's doing it right. Hey, he may be one of your best players. He's got a high fever. He don't play.
Exactly.
What about fans in the stands?
That I haven't heard much. I haven't heard what either way. I don't know if because if we're going to socially distance them in school in the classroom, like a couple days in, a couple days out. I don't know how they're going to bring them all together on a Friday night.
Yeah. How do you run a play? You guys are the football guys, the coaches, how do you run a play if you don't have all your team there all the time?
I think with practices, I would anticipate that the kids would have to be there. I mean, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but you're because you're not in school today, but you're doing the distance learning. So you're still at school, but you got to be there for the practices because, I tell the parents all the time that I'm a stickler. I have a very small list of excusable absence because like you said, you're missing 3-4 kids. Good luck trying to put a play in. They don't see it and such. And I'm sure with lacrosse, you have the same problem.
But if they're signing up to play the sport, they've got to know those are expectations. I mean, I think Dan can agree with this. We're both varsity coaches. If you are signing up to play that sport, you're playing a varsity level. You might not be getting equal playing time, but if you choose to be on that team, and you want to be there, you're going to be there. I mean, I'm strict on if girls aren't showing up to practice and they're not on the field on time, that's going to impact their playing time, and they know that. Yeah. So I think we've all got those in place already that if you're not going to show up for practice, but you signed up to be on the team, you're going to have to deal with the repercussions.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Don't you think that unexcused absences and missing practices, don't you think that takes on a new meaning now? Because think about it. A player misses practice, you don't know where he's been. Right. So how can you just readily let him back around his teammates or let him back around people in the locker room when you don't know where he's been, who he's been around? He could get affected. He could be affected. I mean, don't you think everything takes on a new meaning now just because of the COVID world that we live in today?
And maybe it has to be to that where you're taking temperatures before they even walk on the field. Maybe you have to. I hate to say it, and it'd be a pain in the butt, but maybe we're coming to that. Maybe that's the new norm.
And I very well could be. And I was just saying this afternoon, I said, hey, if that's something they want to do, I love football. It's done a ton for me, and I want these kids to be out there. If that's what we have to do for this year, hopefully not another year after that, but if that's what it takes, then I think that's what we'll have to do. And I know I'd be willing to do that. And to answer Lomas' question, I do believe it does take on a lot more meaning. We still take attendance in case something happens, a kid doesn't show up for practice, but it's now to the point where it's almost like school now. You got to make a quick call and say, hey, your son's not here right now.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to practice, and they're there at the mall doing something they shouldn't be.
We have to do a live class dojo on our phones for practice or something that parents can check into. I don't know. But again, and I know we had another question about parents, whether or not they want their kids out on the field. And I do think that's a family discussion. Are you going to play the sport? Are you willing to be out there? I mean, are you willing to go to the grocery store right now? Is that something that you want to do? And from the parents that I've kind of been in contact with, I think they all want their kids to be able to play again, but they want to do so safely.
Right. And that's
You're right. You're right. And no, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, you hit it right on the head with that. It's going to, I want my son, I want my daughter out there. What are you going to do to limit, the opportunity that's happening or them getting the virus and such? And I think that's on us, the district, and how we're gonna put this together, because we just can't walk out and say we start July 1st. Here we go.
Right.
A little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think it's gonna. You're right about that. I'm just comparing it, just looking at what the professional leagues are doing, isolating guys in hotels. They can't, if they leave that hotel, then they got to be retested. or they got to be quarantined for a certain amount of time because they don't know where they went. And they're saying a lot of this is not for those guys, it's for their family members, the elderly people that they may be around,
Right.
smaller kids that they may infect. It's not for the athletes. It's more for the people that are around them that they come into contact with, that I think they're trying to prevent, or they're trying to make it as safe as possible. And I think we kind of have to look at it the same way on the high school level too, because we know that most of the kids in high school, they're pretty much healthy kids. It's just their parents, grandparents,
right.
and other people that they're around that we don't know may have some type of health problem or underlying health problem.
But how do you quarantine a 16-year-old?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, they're not staying in hotels every weekend for a game. They're going home to their bed. They're seeing their parents. They're seeing their siblings. They're seeing their cousins, grandma, grandpa, whatever it might be. How do you monitor that they're quarantined? How do you quarantine them to protect those other people? I mean, you can't put up a 15-year-old in a hotel room every night after practice or after a game. So how would that look at this level?
There's so much there. I think you really have a very difficult job, because not only are you dealing on the front lines with the kids who are, of course, young and invincible and teenagers. Okay. And I don't need to say anything else, but you've got them. I mean, realistically, plus you're also both dealing with the parents as well as the school districts, the academic community, the sports community. There's so much going on there. Is it something that you've thought about, how you're going to handle all those different stakeholders?
Yeah, and I kind of jot things down of possible questions that could arise. And as you were talking right there, I thought of another one is water bottles. That's going to be a big issue.
Yes.
And years ago,
yes,
I remember getting, as part of the camp pack, I'd get each kid his own water bottle. Then I look over and they're drinking. They're too lazy to go walk and get their own water.
They all share water bottles. They all want to pass it around. I think as soon as things were getting a little more serious, that Wednesday that Rochester said, okay, school is going to be closed Thursday, Friday, I texted the JV coach of mine and I said, pick up a case of bottled water on your way to on the way to the tryout today. And I got a big 36 pack of bottled water. And I said, I don't want to see anybody sharing a water bottle. I don't care if you're siblings or not. Like, if that's your big sister, nobody's sharing. I bought everybody their own bottle. I mean, it was a $10 case, but I was like, we're not even going to risk it. I don't want to see high fives. I don't want to see you guys touching. Like, we're going to be out on the field, but if we take a break, you guys are drinking your own bottle, no hugging, anything.
Yeah, for my camps, that's what I do. I give kids, regular water bottles, but we spend probably about 5 minutes before the camp starts. I pass out a Sharpie. I make every kid write his name on his own bottle, so they'll know their bottle. So, like you're saying, there's little things like this. But Deb, I want to pose a question to you that's related to Dan and to Allie. Let me ask you this. Say a kid does go out there on the field and say he contracts the virus. Is there anything law-wise that coaches can do? Will we see a rash of people or parents trying to sue coaches because they feel like they kind of put their son or daughter in harm's way? Is there any responsibility that the coaches may have to bear going through this?
I think that's a really interesting question. The big thing would be, can you prove any causality? Because you can't necessarily prove that they got the disease on the field. And that's where I think we're going to be able to say, because with this particular disease, and we talked with Dr. Rodney, and we've talked about it is a respiratory illness. you can touch something and then touch your nose or your face or something, and you can get it. And we can't prove that it happened on the field. And that's where we're going to start seeing that. I don't think the coaches are going to be liable, or the school districts, because there's no way to prove.
And two,
but it's going to be difficult. It is definitely going to be difficult.
I think, again, it kind of goes back to that choice, right? I mean, if you're not feeling good, if you're concerned about it, you don't have to be there. And it's not like a coach is forcing an injured player to go out on the field. It's not like somebody who's showing signs of concussion is being put in a game. This is, I mean, if that's the case, then yes, that coach might be liable. I mean, if you're injured and that coach says you still have to go on that field, that's one thing. But
yeah, that's not it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying is if they're choosing to go out on the field, and I mean, it's like, again, do you want to go to the grocery store? Are you going to the grocery store? Are you willing to take that risk? Are you going to call Grubhub to come deliver your dinner?
One of the issues we're going to have to deal with on that is the fact that a lot of people are asymptomatic.
Exactly.
That was going to be my point there. And I'm just being the contrarian. I like this, but let me be the contrarian. Let me say this. Like you say, a lot of this is you don't know. Kids may not know they have the virus in them. So would another kid feel like that he was put in harm's way or he was exposed to it? I mean, Deb, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm not getting it out right, but that's a great point, because that's where I was going to go at. What if you don't even know you have it? And,
Yeah. And I had a very similar conversation today. I went in and I cleaned out my classroom and had my mask on and everything, and I had to turn in different folders. And I mean, you've got a point where what if kids are just being kids and they decide to say, hey, I just sneezed on you, now you have this, and they're trying to joke around, but you don't know. Kids joke around like that and they want to make a joke of it, but in all seriousness, you don't know. I mean, they're healthy teenagers out there.
And to go along with what you said, I'm not sure who the players' names, but that was in the NBA when this first started out.
Rudy Gobert. Yeah.
Making a joke about it, hugging and kissing the players, and he had it.
Exactly.
He had it, and so that's and I go back to like the water, and I think I think we'll be protected from if something were to happen, but I think there's certain situations. Some parents can be parents, and I think like water is a big issue. So nobody can look back and say, well, when you had a water break, the kids just kind of went and did their own thing. I think if you can eliminate anybody pointing fingers that way, because I think that's the first thing people will look at, or sharing of equipment. Somebody's heard they give their equipment to them, and as much as we can put their numbers on it and kind of keep an eye on them.
Or passing a helmet, or hey, I forgot my goggles today, let me borrow yours, or something like that.
Well, here's a really good question. Is there a checklist for the teacher and coaches with protocols, or do you think you'll be developing that? I assume there isn't one yet.
I constantly ask this question. What is going to be the protocol in I teach middle school. What's going to be the protocol in my classroom? If a kid coughs, do I have to go on lockdown in my classroom? What's going to happen? If I don't do anything, is that kid going to go home and say, so-and-so coughed in the classroom? Do I have to make a Lysol shield for them to walk through when they go out of my classroom? I don't know what protocol is going to look like with this, especially being airborne, or you touch a surface. What is this going to look like? I think we've kind of got to wait on more research to see how we can protect ourselves.
And then I think as the seasons progress throughout the year, but we'll talk fall because that's coming up. The flu goes around, kids naturally get sick. I can only imagine what that's going to sound like with some of the kids. Someone's coughing, and like we said, kids can be kids, joking around about it and such. And it's almost like we got to be on that high horse as much as we possibly can to cut it all out.
Well, it makes me wonder too, with the plans for kind of limiting and social distancing in the school. I mean, you have that big kind of sweep of everybody getting sick by the end of September usually. But if we're social distancing, is that going to happen? Are we still going to have that sweep of everybody kind of getting all these germs around them? If we're being so precautious, is that going to happen?
Maybe everybody will just be healthier?
Maybe we're finally practicing health the way we should and hygiene.
And maybe we'll get smaller.
Well,
Yeah.
I know we were talking. Yeah, me and Dale were talking last weekend. You know, the University of South Carolina, I was telling her once they go into school, when they come back for the fall, they said once the Thanksgiving Day break takes place, that they won't come back with face-to-face school. They're going to go online from that point on. Because like they're saying, all these kids are going to leave the school to go on Thanksgiving Day break. They don't want them to come back to the campus and be infected or infect each other. So they say from that point on, they're just going to do it online. The rest of the year, school will be done online. I mean,
Michigan
you just got all
State
these
said
different
the same
colleges.
Thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
They're looking
Michigan
at different
State
things.
Same thing today.
And
yeah,
I mean, I think this is one of the questions asked earlier that I'd really like to touch on is the mental health side of all of this. I mean, as a teacher, I have live Zoom meetings on almost a daily basis, whether it's with my students or as a staff meeting, and I'm drained. I don't want to sit there and teach an hour-long class every single day. You know, I really, it's draining for me. It's draining for them. It requires more focus in general. I mean, there have been a few research, like articles come out saying you are actually more mentally tired working virtually than you would be going into work. So
wow.
What are we going to do? Mental health wise, we've got to make sure that we're taking care of the kids. We've got to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and not ask too much from either side. So, I mean, that's a great question. And I think right now, everybody's posing these questions that we don't have answers to.
No, and I think
you're right.
Too, you know, you think about, you know, you get pulled in all directions, and then I've got two daughters. One will be going away to state, and one will be in high school, and worrying about them. And when they're on there, I mean, you're right.
Yeah. Dan, even, you know, we got a trip to Ohio this year, scheduled trip to Ohio. That's not like going around the corner to West Bloomfield, you know, a 10, 15-minute trip. We're talking a couple of hours to get to play Massillon. You know, again, social distancing on the bus, on the transportation, going there and from there. I mean, again, I'm saying this more as a remark than a question, but it's just like Ali said, it's just so many questions that we don't have any answers to. And I don't think nobody has the answers to them right now. Everybody's just kind of weighing it out and just kind of seeing what happens and kind of taking it day by day. But it's a lot of things that's just going to seem like it's so different from us, and a whole bunch of things that we're going to have to do differently than we ever thought about doing in the past.
Right. And in terms of qualifications and things that we might have to do, there might have to be more trainings we go to. There might have to be more virtual trainings about bloodborne pathogens. Maybe we've got to do a COVID-19 training that we do. I mean, we're CPR AED certified. I mean, you have to be in order to coach. So maybe there's going to be another training that we have to do to increase our qualifications to be around these kids. We don't know. So I really think we've got to wait, and it's a waiting game right now. It's a wait and see what research comes up and where we get with that in terms of answering questions. I mean, again, I think we've posed so many questions here that maybe we have more questions than we started with because we're all kind of bouncing off each other. But it is
the way it should go about, because I mean, you get a couple people like, and this has been great. I mean, you start thinking of other things that haven't even thought about before, you know. And I look at like coming up to the fall, everybody's in the same boat, being unaware. Because I think about like what the NFL said the other day. Well, we're probably gonna have basketball, hockey, and baseball to kind of look at, see how things go. What could they have done? And now we'll cover our bases. We don't have that luxury right now. And
Right. The only thing that scares me, Dan, too, is like we're talking about, we're looking at the professional leagues as examples. but they got so much money, they could do testing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They could do a lot of the things that we can't do at the high school level, or that we're relying on the parents really to do, right? Get your kids tested, talk to the parents to find out if any of your kids have a fever or anything like that. Like I say, with the NFL, they got money to test all those athletes before, after events, you know, and some of their family members. You just, in high school, you just don't have that luxury.
Right, and that might be an adjustment to all of the budgets that we have. I mean, I know lacrosse, we're a self-funded sport. We don't get a lot from the school. It's all self-funded. It's not part of pay to play. So maybe that's something that has to be factored into the budget, is you've got to be able to test. Maybe you don't get new uniforms this year. Maybe you've got to wait another 2 or 3 years to get new uniforms because they're holding up right now. And maybe we need to invest in making sure that the kids are protected out of our budgets.
And I think if, you know, if we can start like with whether they do it every day, they can take in a temperature,
yeah.
And then if there is, and you know, if there seems to be a fever, they test them immediately for it. I think that's the one area I think we need to start with, and then kind of work from there.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot. We're running out of time here. We've covered a lot. I think we've probably posed more questions than we've answered.
We're there.
Hey, I'm ready to go now.
Yeah, we're just getting going.
Yeah, for sure.
I know, but I'm getting the producer Ray's telling me we've got to wrap up.
I know that's funny you say that, Deb, because we were just talking about that. We were like, well, if we're gonna pose all these questions, we better have some answers for these questions too. So it's amazing how we always do that. Me and Deb will start talking, then we'll end up with more questions than solutions for those questions. So it's funny, but this has been like that. That's how it's been since this COVID world has changed everything for us. It's things we never talked about in the past that since COVID has hit, we're talking about, you know, and we're thinking about. So I guess that's what's bringing on so many questions every time we get on the podcast and talk about different subjects. If it's dealing with this COVID, it always leads back to a lot of questions.
It really does. I mean, we've got to recognize this is the first time in any of our lifetimes that we've ever had anything like this. As you know, 1918, the Spanish flu, maybe none of us were alive here at that time. But we also didn't have what we have today with the social media, the internet, the close proximity, the fact that we have airplanes, the fact that this spreads so quickly. You know, as of today, I heard that we have over 100,000 deaths in the United States. It's just, this is the first time we've seen it. We're creating a new playbook, if you will, pun intended, by the way.
Yeah, no, good one, Deb. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Pun me to death, Deb. But Deb, I got a question for Allie and for Dan. We're just like our frontline workers. To me, you guys are going to almost become like frontline workers.
Yes,
I mean, because you don't know what kid has what. You could test, but as we know, it could incubate in your body for 14 days without any symptom. So my question to you guys, are you going to be nervous when you're back in front of a group of kids and you're teaching these kids? Is it something that you're going to think about? What do you think your reactions might be when you guys finally get back in the classroom?
Good question.
Yeah.
Dan, you can go first.
Awesome. I think my focus will be on the kids. You know, I won't even really concern myself as much as that, you know, parents are entrusting their kids with us, hopefully understanding that we're going to do the best that we possibly can. But, you know, I can honestly, I don't think I'll ever go to practice saying to myself, what if I get it? What if I think I just focus on the season and focus on the health of the kids and making sure we're doing everything right and not having, you know, if somebody does catch it, well, I wish we would have done this, or this, or what if this happened? So I think, you know, putting them ahead of myself kind of makes me move on.
I think when you choose to become a coach or a teacher, it's a selfless job. I mean, to be honest, that question reminds me a lot of, and this is terrible to say, but when we have the discussion of shootings in schools or intruders in schools, I mean, what do you say to a 6th grader that says, well, are you going to protect me if that happens? What are you going to do? And my first thought is never about myself. It's, what do I do to keep these kids safe? And so when you asked that question, my thought was, what am I going to do to keep not only my lacrosse girls safe, but the kids that are in my classroom on a daily basis, whether they're 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, whatever it might be. But it's not a concern for myself. It's a concern for them. How am I going to keep them safe from this? What can I do to protect them? And I think that goes back to the beginning when I said, how do you coach them through this? I mean, this is uncharted territory. I have no idea. I mean, I'm a younger coach. I was in high school not that long ago, and I have no clue what to say to high school seniors right now that they just lost their high school season. So what am I going to say to that freshman that's going to ask me, how are you going to protect me from this? I honestly don't know, but it's never a personal thought. It's always, what am I going to do for the kids to protect them?
And I think to go with that is it's important that they're going to look towards us, and you know, if we stand through the strong, and I think they'll feed off of that, opposed to, you know, us worrying that what if we get it, what if we get it, what if we get it. So I think that's just as important as anything.
Well, I think you guys have been great guests.
I appreciate this. This was great.
You know, I also think that perhaps we should do this again, maybe in August or September when we know a little more.
Yeah, like a round 2.
Yeah.
A round 2 of this, because
second period.
The end of August for the game start. I mean, by that point, everything's in place, and
we'll know about classroom.
Right. I mean, we've talked about mental health. We've talked about physical health. We've talked about, you know, the fact that our educators are really our frontline workers. Mm-hmm. You know, at this point, there's a lot. We took the educators right off the front line immediately, but now you're going to be it. So we oftentimes do shout out to frontline workers and shout out to you.
Absolutely. Shout out to the teachers. And you guys got a great commercial. I see that commercial where they got these parents that are about to pull their hair out because they're having to homeschool their kids, and they saying how rough it is to do it. And all those parents are saying, thank you, teachers. Thank you. So we want to say thank you, teachers, at Sportsslaw, because I'm considering you guys heroes, because you guys are going to be, like I say, front line when those kids get back. Think about it. You guys are going to deal with the kids more than their parents are, if you think about that. So, you know, my hats and everything else is off to you guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. But hey, don't forget, you'll be on the front line standing right next to me come August.
We're going to be getting masks and PPE for everybody. But thank you both for coming on. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We will reconvene. And for everybody who's listening, again, shout out to our frontline workers. Thank you all. And don't forget to look at Sportsslaw. Check out sportsslaw.com. Check out our Facebook page. We've had some great questions. Keep sending the questions and we'll work on answering them.